Breaking. Rachel Reeves is in full-blown panic mode. Britain's farmers have just delivered the knockout punch that could destroy Labour's most controversial tax policy. Tractors are shutting down roads, protests are exploding across the countryside, and Reeves is scrambling to contain the political wildfire spreading through rural Britain. What started as a tax plan to target the wealthy has spiraled into a national crisis that could bring Labour's credibility crashing down before their first year in power is even finished. And now, with farmers mobilizing like never before, the so-called tractor tax is on the edge of total collapse. This isn't just another policy dispute. This is the political equivalent of a controlled detonation, and the explosion is happening right under Rachel Reeves's feet. The very families Labour promised to protect have risen up against her flagship economic plan. And the scale of the revolt is staggering. Across the countryside, farmers are blocking motorways, rolling convoys of tractors into Westminster, and bringing Britain's political establishment to its knees. What makes this rebellion so devastating for Reeves is that it's not led by political opponents or angry activists. It's led by ordinary families who feed the nation, families who've survived recessions, diseases, and decades of brutal agricultural markets. These are not radicals. These are the backbone of Britain's food supply. And now they're saying Labour has betrayed them. The so-called tractor tax was sold as a clever way to catch wealthy landowners using farms as tax shelters. Reeves and her allies promised ordinary farmers would be protected. But the numbers tell a different story. Instead of targeting millionaire investors, the policy is hammering working farm families with inheritance tax bills so large they could be forced to sell land just to survive. And when those families are destroyed, it's not hedge fund managers who lose, it's rural Britain itself. The protests have become impossible to ignore. Thousands of tractors have turned rural anger into a national spectacle. Streets are choked with farm machinery, towns and cities are echoing with horns and chants, and the images flooding social media are political dynamite. Farmers in tweed jackets standing beside their tractors, explaining complex tax traps in plain English, have proven far more effective than Labour's carefully crafted press releases. Children holding signs reading, "Who will feed Britain?" are cutting through the spin and striking right at the heart of the public. Rachel Reeves built her reputation as Labour's Iron Chancellor, the calm and competent alternative to conservative chaos. But the tractor tax has flipped that image on its head. Instead of strength, Reeves now looks weak. Instead of control, she looks cornered. And the panic is showing. Reports from inside the Treasury reveal frantic late-night meetings, desperate attempts to rewrite talking points, and ministers begging Reeves to backtrack before the damage becomes irreversible. The same Labour machine that promised steady hands on the economy now looks like it's running on pure panic. What makes this worse for Reeves is that the data isn't on her side. Expert analysis has already exposed Labour's tractor tax as fundamentally broken. The very think tank that gave the policy its academic legitimacy has now published a damning report showing it hits the wrong people with brutal precision. While only a minority of rich landowners feel the impact, nearly 2/3 of mixed farming operations, Britain's most productive farms, are facing devastating tax bills. These aren't wealthy speculators, they're family businesses, often passed down for centuries, now staring down financial extinction. The contradictions inside Labour's own ranks are tearing the party apart. Treasury officials claim only 28% of farms will be hit, while the Department for Environment says the real number is closer to 66%. That's not a small difference. That's the gap between a minor adjustment and an agricultural disaster. And when government departments can't even agree on basic facts, the public assumes one thing: incompetence or deception. Both are poison for a government less than a year into power. Rachel Reeves stood in Parliament and promised this policy would safeguard small farms. Now the evidence shows it's doing the exact opposite. Every tractor on the street is a visual reminder that Reeves either didn't understand her own policy or deliberately misled the public about its impact. Both possibilities are fatal to her carefully built image as the Iron Chancellor. The comparison is already being made. Reeves is beginning to look less like the calm savior of labor's finances and more like the architect of a policy disaster to rival the infamous conservative mini-budget. The political pressure on Rachel Reeves is now reaching a breaking point, and the farmers know it. Every protest, every convoy of tractors, every viral video of families explaining how Labor's policy will destroy them is tightening the noose around Reeves's credibility. She can feel the walls closing in. What began as just another tax measure has transformed into the greatest political rebellion Labor has faced since taking office. And Reeves is stuck in the middle of it, panicked, exposed, and running out of options. The scale of the backlash is unprecedented. Across Britain, farmers are no longer just protesting, they're shutting things down. Tractors are blocking major transport routes, grinding supply chains to a halt, and forcing the government to take notice. The message is simple and brutal. Without farmers, Britain stops. For decades, rural communities were dismissed as politically weak, scattered across the countryside and easy to ignore. Not anymore. The tractor tax has united them into a single, powerful movement with one demand: scrap the policy or face consequences that will shake labor to its core. Rachel Reeves never expected her first great battle as chancellor to come from the countryside. But the farmers have exposed something bigger than one flawed tax. They've shown that Labor's carefully constructed image of competence is nothing more than a facade. The tractor tax was supposed to raise easy money from a politically quiet sector. Instead, it has revealed deep cracks inside Labor's policy machine, cracks so wide they threaten the government's survival. When your own experts, your own departments, and your own supporters are contradicting your promises, you don't look like a leader. You look like a fraud. And the numbers Reeves is clinging to are collapsing under scrutiny. The Treasury's rosy projections of a neat, efficient tax grab have been shredded by real-world data. Economists, think tanks, and agricultural groups have all reached the same conclusion. The tractor tax doesn't just miss its target, it flips the entire logic of taxation upside down. Instead of hitting wealthy speculators, it devastates the very people the government claims to protect. Instead of strengthening Britain's economy, it risks hollowing out the backbone of rural production. Instead of delivering fairness, it delivers ruin. The anger in the countryside is visceral, but what makes this rebellion so deadly for Labour is the sympathy it generates across the entire nation. Ordinary voters are watching these protests and seeing something Labour cannot spin away. They're seeing hardworking families, not political operatives. They're seeing children on tractors, not lobbyists in suits. They're seeing mothers and fathers in muddy boots, explaining calmly and clearly how a government tax will destroy generations of work. These images cut through every excuse Reeves can make. Because this is not ideology, this is reality, and reality is destroying Labour's story. Inside Labour headquarters, the panic is almost audible. Advisors are begging Reeves to stage a U-turn. Senior ministers are warning that rural constituencies Labour worked for decades to win are about to collapse. Backbench MPs are whispering about betrayal and incompetence. And the opposition is circling like sharks, ready to feast on every mistake Reeves makes. Already, comparisons are being drawn to the worst economic disasters in modern British politics. Labour's Iron Chancellor, who promised stability, is now being branded the architect of chaos. Reeves herself is trapped in a nightmare scenario. To reverse the tractor tax now would be a humiliation so total it could define her entire career. It would mean admitting that her most high-profile policy, the cornerstone of her fiscal plan, was a catastrophic failure. But to press on is even worse. Every day the protests grow, every day the data mounts, every day her credibility bleeds away. It's a lose-lose situation and Reeves knows it. That's why the panic is visible. That's why ministers are scrambling. That's why labor looks more desperate with every passing hour. The farmers, meanwhile, sense victory. They've seen governments back down before. They know that when the political cost becomes higher than the revenue raised, even the most stubborn ministers crack. And they're not letting up. They've built momentum, they've captured the public's sympathy, and they've put Rachel Reeves in an impossible position. Every convoy, every blockade, every headline pushes the tractor tax closer to total collapse. And this is where the suspense becomes unbearable for labor. Because the question is no longer just about farmers. The question is whether Reeves herself can survive this. Her reputation as the Iron Chancellor has already taken a fatal hit. The illusion of competence is shattered, and in politics, once your credibility is gone, it never comes back. Reeves can back down, but the damage will linger.